The wind howled across the endless Mongolian steppe. It carried no mercy, no shelter, no promise that anyone would live to see another sunrise. Imagine, for a moment, that you're only 9 years old. Your father has just died after being poisoned by a rival clan. Everything your family owns, the horses that carry you across the plains, the food that keeps you alive, the very means of survival, is taken away. Then the people who once swore loyalty to your family quietly disappear over the horizon, leaving you, your mother, and your siblings to face a land where hunger is as common as the wind itself. They don't abandon you because they hate you. They abandon you because they believe you're already finished. Out here, winter doesn't ask who deserves another chance. It doesn't bargain. It doesn't forgive. It simply takes. Most children placed in that situation would become another forgotten story buried beneath the grasslands. But this child refused to disappear. From those empty plains would rise one of the most influential and controversial figures in human history, a man whose name would reshape continents, unite scattered tribes, and build an empire unlike anything the world had ever seen. His name was Temüjin. History would remember him as Genghis Khan. Before we go any further, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Every emperor has an origin story. Few begin with abandonment. Before the victories, before the empire, before the name that would echo across continents, there was a frightened boy wondering whether his family would survive another week. History remembers Genghis Khan. Almost no one remembers the child called Temüjin. The Mongolian steppes stretched farther than the eye could see, a breathtaking landscape that offered incredible freedom to those strong enough to survive, yet punished even the smallest mistake with unforgiving consequences. Families depended on their herds for nearly everything. Horses carried them across the plains, sheep and goats provided food and clothing, and every season demanded careful preparation because no one could predict when the weather would suddenly turn against them. Tribal alliances shifted constantly as groups competed over grazing lands, water, livestock, and influence. Peace was often temporary, and trust could disappear with a single disagreement. When Temüjin's father died after being poisoned by rivals, the fragile security surrounding his family collapsed almost overnight. Men who had once pledged loyalty saw no advantage in protecting the widow and her children. One after another, they gathered their animals, packed their belongings, and rode away, leaving the family behind to face a future that appeared impossible. For Temüjin, childhood ended the moment those riders vanished beyond the horizon. Every sunrise became another test of whether his family could survive until sunset. His mother refused to surrender, teaching her children to gather wild roots, edible plants, berries, and anything the land could provide. They trapped small animals, caught fish in freezing streams, and stretched every meal as far as possible. Winters were especially merciless, covering the plains with deep snow while icy winds swept endlessly across the grasslands. Many families never survived such conditions. Yet hardship became Temüjin's greatest teacher. He learned to watch people carefully before trusting them. He discovered that patience often mattered more than speed, that careful planning could overcome physical strength, and that determination meant continuing forward even when every reason suggested giving up. Those difficult years shaped the qualities that would later define his leadership far more than any battlefield ever could. Years later, another moment threatened to erase his future forever. During a conflict between rival tribes, Temüjin was captured by enemies determined to ensure he could never become a threat. His hands were restrained, and a heavy wooden cane was locked around his neck, making movement exhausting and escape almost unimaginable. Prisoners placed in such conditions rarely regained their freedom. They were displayed as warnings to others, reminders of what happened to those who challenged the wrong people. Every night, Temüjin remained under close watch while his captors believed his story had already reached its final chapter. Yet history often changes because of decisions that receive little attention at the time. According to traditional accounts, one member of the tribe guarding him chose compassion over fear. Rather than returning the young captive to those who wished to control or kill him, the man quietly helped him escape beneath the cover of darkness. There were no witnesses celebrating the moment, no grand speeches, and no promises that the risk would ever be remembered. It was simply one ordinary individual making an extraordinary choice. Temüjin disappeared into the vast steppe, carrying little more than his determination to survive another day. Without that single act of courage, the leader the world would one day know as Genghis Khan might never have existed. It is a reminder that history is not shaped only by kings and conquerors. Sometimes it turns because one person chooses humanity when it would have been easier to choose safety. Freedom did not solve Temüjin's greatest challenge. The Mongolian tribes remained deeply divided, locked in generations of rivalry, revenge, and competition. Alliances formed quickly and dissolved just as fast, while leaders constantly struggled to maintain loyalty among followers whose support could disappear overnight. Temüjin realized that simply defeating rivals would never create lasting unity. He needed to offer people something they had rarely experienced before, a reason to believe they could build a stronger future together. Instead of rewarding individuals solely because they belonged to powerful families, he increasingly promoted those who demonstrated loyalty, intelligence, courage, and ability. A man born into an ordinary household could earn responsibility through merit rather than bloodline. Experienced warriors, skilled hunters, trusted advisors, and capable organizers found opportunities that many traditional tribal systems would never have allowed. This approach attracted followers from different backgrounds who saw in Temüjin a leader willing to judge them by what they could contribute instead of who their ancestors had been. Gradually, former enemies became allies, and scattered tribes began joining a larger coalition. Years of negotiation, warfare, diplomacy, and strategic marriages eventually transformed the political landscape of the steppe. Then, in 1206, representatives of the united tribes gathered in a great assembly known as a Kurultai. There, Temüjin received a new title that would echo through history, Genghis Khan, often understood to mean a universal or oceanic ruler. For the first time, many of the competing Mongol tribes stood together under a single leader, marking the beginning of one of history's most influential empires. The campaigns that followed changed the course of world history on a scale few could have imagined. The Mongol armies became known for remarkable mobility, traveling extraordinary distances with discipline and coordination that surprised opponents across Asia and beyond. Every warrior relied on several horses, allowing rapid movement while preserving the animal's strength. Communication networks carried messages across enormous territories with impressive speed, enabling commanders to respond quickly as conditions changed. Military leaders carefully studied geography, gathered intelligence, and adapted their strategies instead of relying on rigid traditions. These strengths allowed Mongol forces to defeat armies that often possessed larger populations, stronger fortifications, or greater material resources. Yet every military success came with an immense human cost. Many cities that resisted conquest suffered devastating destruction. Civilian populations experienced violence, displacement, famine, and loss on a massive scale. Entire communities disappeared during campaigns that expanded the empire across much of Eurasia. At the same time, Historians also recognize that the unified empire created new opportunities for long-distance trade, communication, and cultural exchange. Merchants traveled more safely across sections of the Silk Road. Goods moved between distant civilizations. Scientific knowledge spread across regions, and many religious communities continued practicing their beliefs under Mongol administration. These developments do not erase the suffering caused by conquest, nor does military achievement excuse human tragedy. Instead, they reveal a legacy that remains deeply complex, combining remarkable administrative innovation with extraordinary destruction. Nearly 8 centuries have passed since Genghis Khan's death, yet his story continues to challenge the way we think about history. Some remember him as a brilliant strategist who united divided tribes and built the largest contiguous empire the world has ever known. Others remember the immense suffering, destruction, and loss that followed his campaigns. Both perspectives are part of the same story, reminding us that history is rarely as simple as heroes and villains. But perhaps the most remarkable chapter isn't the empire itself. It's the frightened boy who stood alone on the endless Mongolian steppe after his world fell apart. Before the victories, before the armies, before the name that would echo across continents, there was only a child struggling to survive another day. No one could have looked at that abandoned boy and imagined the future that awaited him. History often celebrates the moment someone changes the world, but it rarely lingers on the years when they were overlooked, underestimated, and nearly forgotten. Maybe that's why Temüjin's story continues to resonate centuries later. It reminds us that the beginning of a life rarely reveals its ending, and that even the most extraordinary journeys often start with circumstances that seem impossible to overcome. If you enjoy thoughtful documentaries exploring the people, events, and decisions that shaped our world, we'd be honored to have you join our growing community. Before you leave, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And if you found this story meaningful, consider subscribing so you never miss our upcoming documentaries. And here's a question I'd genuinely love to hear your thoughts on. Do you believe history is shaped more by the hardships people endure, or by the choices they make after those hardships? There isn't a single right answer, and that's what makes history so fascinating. Share your perspective in the comments below. I read as many of your comments as possible, and your ideas often inspire the stories we explore next. Until our next documentary, thank you for watching, and thank you for keeping history alive.